The school board work session begins in 1 minute. Please take your seats. Again, the school board work session begins in 1 minute.
Good morning. I now call the June 2nd, 2022 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices, remove hats, and to avoid disturbing others. I'll now ask the school board's attorney to explain the rules for this work session.
Thank you, Chair Cummings. This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right of citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form located in the lobby and hand it to the board clerk. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the board clerk will call speakers' names in the order received. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these important rules.
Thank you. We'll now begin this morning's work session with the superintendent's administrative briefing.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Great to see you this morning in June. But the only item I have is just a reminder that while the end of the school year passed, we have summer school coming up on June 6th, and we still have 3 graduations left. So we resume graduations tomorrow night with Vanguard at Livestock Pavilion at 6 o'clock, Bellevue High School on Saturday morning at 8 at their school, and Lake Weir High School at 6 p.m. at Livestock Pavilion on Saturday evening. So I just wanted to send a reminder that graduations are still going forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Superintendent. All right, we're going to start with our first order of business, General Insurance Renewal Review. Director Mr. Terry Norwood is going to give us that presentation. And if he's not here, I guess we will move to the next one, because I'm not saying anybody move. So we'll go ahead and move to the Disposition of Tangible Property process. Ms. Teresa Boston Ellis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Board Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Campbell, board members, Dr. Gullett, Mrs. Prestopino, and Attorney Powers. We are presenting some information on the process of disposition of tangible property. I would like to introduce to you Ms. Wendy Powers, who is our, we call her our one-man team of keeping up with the inventory of the district. So I present to you Mrs. Wendy Powers, and she will go through the presentation, and she's brought some additional folks to help out with this today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning, board members, Chair Cummings, Superintendent Gullett, Attorney Powers, and Ms. Presapino. Today, I'm going to provide for you an overview of the property records process and disposition of tangible property. And I've also brought representatives from the district for infrastructure, fleet, and technical services. So our goal is to support Achieve 2026. Goal 4, part of the strategic plan, is fiscal and operational efficiency to ensure operational effectiveness and efficiency of resources are aligned with our strategic priorities. To give you an overview, it is governed by Florida Statute 274, Administrative Code 69I-73, and board policies. The district is served by one property specialist, that would be myself. And we have 167 sites. That's comprised of 49 schools, 50 cafeterias, and 68 departments. At the beginning of fiscal year 21-22, annual inventory year, we started with 15,205 tangible assets, the value of which is $35.4 million, and that's current value, which is the original cost less the accumulated depreciation. Tangible property, according to Board Policy 7.77, inventory and property records, the district will maintain adequate and accurate records and perform an annual inventory. This applies to tangible property. It's defined as non-consumable with a life expectancy of 1 year or more and a threshold of $1,000. The life cycle, it can be summarized in 6 steps. Acquire, create the record, the Board of Public Instruction process, management of tangible property, inventory, and dispose. For the first step, to acquire, it's typically done through a purchase order. On a weekly basis in Skyward, we generate a report of items that have been paid. We can also do this by purchasing card, internal fund, or donations, and the last 3 must be manually entered into the system. In the case of donations, it's once it's been board approved and received, and it reflects the value of that donation. The second step is to create the record. That's when we assign a Board of Public Instruction, commonly referred to as the BPI number, and the following is recorded in Skyward: the class code, which identifies the type of item that it is, the life expectancy, which is depreciation, the cost or value, the funding source, and a description and location. The Board of Public Instruction BPI process, it's assigned a unique identifying number, which is printed on the barcode label. This is sent to the property custodian at the site, along with a fixed asset form generated from Skyward. The property custodian completes that form, affixes the sticker, returns it to Property Records Department, and the property specialist updates Skyward. We try to get serial numbers, who it's assigned to, and other identifiable information. The management of tangible property. If an item moves or it's relocated, we want to capture that on a property transfer form. It's completed and turned into property records to update Skyward. If that item has been replaced under warranty, we will make a note in the system, update the serial number, and get a new tag for it if it's necessary. We will also print duplicate missing, or worn barcode tags. And if an item is lost or stolen, per board policy, the site property custodian will notify risk and/or the police if it's needed, and provide a copy of those reports, which is also included to the report of disposition that the board receives for approval. Inventory. This is an annual cycle conducted once a year. It runs fiscal year from July 1st to June 30th. And this is completed using Skyward and an asset management system. Reports are run from Skyward. Site visits are scheduled. If it's a school, it is done in a fashion that does not interfere with testing. The items are confirmed with a handheld scanning device and paper records. And items are reconciled if missing using Asset Track and Skyward. The goal is 1% or less not found per year. Last year, we met that goal. We had one item, and this year we located it because it was out for repairs. Dispose. The disposition of tangible property is recorded in school board minutes, and that is the method per statute. The types of disposal reasons are obsolete, stolen, damaged or destroyed, cannibalization, traded in or returned to the vendor. The methods of disposal include recycling, scrap, using for parts, e-waste, public auction, donation to nonprofit or government as specified in statute. And the proceeds are returned to the general fund. To summarize, you can see the complete life cycle from acquisition to disposal. And the decision-making regarding the disposition of tangible property resides at the property custodian level. That's going to be your school, food services, custodial departments like that. And here today, we also have to provide in-depth information on how those decisions are made regarding disposal are representatives from the district for technology, vehicles, and technical services. And the first person I'd like to introduce is Mr. Edward Beers, Supervisor of Infrastructure.
Good morning. In technology, we use two methods to start the cycle out to determine if the device or systems are at the end of its life cycle. We use the vendor support, and then we also use software support. With these two methods, we ensure that the systems are repairable, reliable, and secure. Once we have determined that the systems have reached their end of their life cycle, we then request approval for disposal. Once we get approval back, we then perform a data sanitization of it, meaning we remove any sensitive information on that device, whether it's computers, hard drives, etc. Once we get that far, then we schedule for the e-waste pickup of that device. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Beers. I'd like to introduce the next speaker, Fleet Manager, Mr. Moore, to discuss vehicles.
Good morning. I want to introduce Paul. Paul will be taking my place as the fleet supervisor. At the end of this month, I'll be retiring after 40 years with the district. So Paul's going to be taking the lead in transportation and taking it to more heights. The school buses and the fleet that we use in the school districts, when they're purchased, they're brought into the district. At that time, we do a PDI, which is a pre-delivery inspection. We put these buses into service, and we have to comply with the DOE inspections with the buses, which completes all 67 school districts in the state that have to comply to this. During the course of time that these inspections are taking place, if a bus for any reason can't meet these expectations, then they're removed from service. We have, at this time, we're going to be taking out 12 buses on this next go-around. These could range from 15 to 20 years old. They have over 400,000 miles on them. The type of engines that are in these buses does not meet today's EPA requirements. They don't build them, and the parts are basically non-available. We put these buses over to the side in what we refer to as the boneyard. We use these existing parts to keep the older buses in the district moving and safe for no cost to the district. We also, when Miss Wendy takes these buses out of service and takes them to the auction and sold, I guess the money's taken back to the general fund to put back into the district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for 40 years of service.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moore and Paul.
Congratulations on your retirement.
And what's Paul's last name?
Grosselfinger? Yes.
Say that again.
Grosselfinger? Did I pronounce it correctly, I hope?
Yeah, just
Okay.
spell it, just spell it, just spell it.
I got it, thank you.
Got it? Okay. Thank you.
All right, so for our last speaker, I'd like to introduce Mr. Duncan for technical services.
Good morning.
Morning.
The Technical Services Department has a scrap metal recycling program. We recycle aluminum, steel, sheet iron, and copper, and HVAC parts and motors. We disassemble the used material and equipment so that we can separate the metals for maximum payment. The recycled material gets taken to a local recycling center for disposal and payment. The payment received is based on the weight of the material and the going rate. The recycling program generates approximately $11,000 a year that goes back into the district's general fund and also saves the cost of having to dispose of the items.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Duncan. So that brings our presentation to a close. And I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, listen, for explaining this process. It is a very lengthy process, but thank you that you're able to salvage or get something back through recycling or through auctions or whatever, however you do it, and keeping those buses on the road as long as you can. I know that's extremely a challenge, especially as we advance in better buses, and we just bought new buses, and I know some of those older buses, once they're out of commission, they're out of commission, so I appreciate it. Thank you for keeping it on the road, and for 40 years, I really appreciate you staying with us for 40 years, so that's a good, that means you were around when I was in school, so, so that's good, so thank you.
I think Chico deserves a big hand.
I do too, That means you at least got me to school safely for the last 3 or 4 years I was in Marion County Public Schools, so thanks, Chico. Mr. Browning?
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Chairman. This is an important area because of the money out and the money back. With Paul coming on board, I'd like to have real serious discussion on increasing the money back. That $11,000, I know that's in raw materials, but that's barely a load when it comes to raw materials. Almost everything nowadays, it has a residual value. And I really want to get into it. Do we have a program at all? Are we using any of our materials like for instructional use? Or are we addressing that market at all? Like, just take, for example, we bring in a new type of computer, and the old computers then go on the market. I'm reminded of Cornell University changing out, once I was privileged to be aware of it, changing out computers because of chips and software, but it was a very valuable thing to other level organizations that did not have that particular new software. Maybe changing from 8 bits to 16 bits to 32 bits, 64 bits, that type of thing. You may go the rest of your career in the former. Do we have anything like that? Are we addressing the educational side of things, or are we addressing these other markets? Do we have anybody on staff that is dedicated to maximizing
I think I'll let
revenues?
Mr. Beers answer that one.
So most of our systems are 5 to 7 years lifespan. Then what we do is part harvest any parts that are still available that can be used in other systems that are still in service. We have done that since day one. As you said, though, as companies, Microsoft, Apple, they have recently changed to a different operation, meaning that software can only be installed on new computers that meet a certain requirements. That doesn't mean we still can't harvest parts. However, we can pull power supplies, memory, stuff like that, and reuse them in other systems to keep them maintained.
We're an educational operation. Are we using this resource at all for education?
Every bit of it's used for education.
No.
Put back for the students.
I'm talking about the like, for example, there's an industry that teaches appliance repair. Well, you've got to take them apart. There's an industry that teaches technical repair, computer repair, that type of thing. You got to take them apart.
I think you're asking, is it coming back for us to be used in a vocational program?
Exactly. Are we utilizing it from an educational point of view? Oh, I see. That's what you're saying. Right. Yes, education going in and use a primary life cycle. I got that. No, my question, thank you, Chair. My question is about the advantages of, like, this technical college, the Technical Institute. Are we using this product, or are we addressing that market nationwide or worldwide?
So we're addressing it two ways. So in some cases, like MTC, that may have a program, we'll offer up some of the old computers so that they can leverage that to teach students advanced skills in computer repair. They also buy new systems in order to teach them today's standards and to keep them in the workforce for current technology. So yes, it's used for both sides of the house.
I see. And could you elaborate on that program?
I wouldn't. So I don't know the program itself. MTC was a cybersecurity program that they had. They also had another A+ program that they were offering, that they do teach the computer components, memory, hardware, how software is loaded, why software has to be loaded on a certain system of 32 bits or 64-bit architects. So.
Well, okay, let me rephrase then. I'm looking for a revenue source. Are we capturing a revenue source in that market? I mean, it's a huge market, and this isn't criticism of the present system.
I couldn't tell you anything about money. I don't get involved in the money aspect of it. We maintain what we currently have. So if the programs are charging money and coming back in, I wouldn't know about that itself.
Okay. Perhaps someone else could answer the question. Are we addressing that market as any of the speakers? Are we addressing the market, or are we just disposing? Are we just getting rid of it? Are we like
so we do get it.
The
so
item?
If you're asking if e-waste gives some kind of return in value of money, yes, it does. How much and what they pay out for different devices, I don't get into that aspect of it. When that money comes back, I would have to defer that over to Wendy to see if you're looking for that particular item.
Yeah, I'm looking for the revenue. In other words, we have millions of dollars going out, and there are industries that live in that world. I saw $11,000, but I'm just asking, have we ever looked at that? Are we looking at it? Perhaps we are.
We do with the e-waste program. The e-waste program, as we e-waste items off, they give us so much money for devices. Now, a lot of our devices are living 7, sometimes 10 years. They're beyond their capability of supporting any new operating system. In today's world, you cannot go back to, let's say, Windows 95 because it has vulnerabilities that puts companies at risk and exposure. So a lot of that depends on that aspect of it. So there is not a great demand for our older systems because we've already used the life cycle of that system and the support of it. So a company X will not buy our old systems to put in production because of the vulnerabilities that it presents itself to that company.
Okay, so we're really not addressing those secondary markets. I'd just like to make a suggestion, Paul, with you coming on board to address that long term, for example, and within the organization, we're looking for revenue. Revenue really pays off, when you're running a large operation, $750 million, approaching $1 billion. So it really matters to have an expert following this, because if it's there, you don't want to just give it away. You want to capture those dollars, and it isn't criticism of the past because times have changed. For example, batteries now are used about 98% of the raw materials are used, and it's incredibly important. We're trying to build an inventory of old retired so that it actually becomes the source material. So it's kind of a new way of thinking. It's a revenue generating world that brings money back because there are ancillary uses. Thank you.
I don't understand what you just meant, because if I understood it, he said there's an e-way program, what I think of as like an Apple phone. You pay $1,000, when you return it, you may get $100. I'm just throwing that out. So you're getting some source of money. So they're saying these computers are old, outdated, they use what they can, but then you're saying there's a secondary option. I don't understand what that meant at all.
Okay,
If you
all
could
right,
explain that.
I can go into it a little bit. It's analogous to, for example, additional ancillary use of any item, like if you're in investing, there are points where entire industries change.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the computers. So you threw that out, so I'm sitting here trying to understand to see if there is that option. So if you could expand on that a little bit.
I am. So follow this. So if you categorically just retire whole sections, often you lose incredible value. For example, a Vanguard type sale of an entire category of items. There's a whole nother market for those, and you're probably putting a lot of treasure out with the trash. That's if that helps you.
It doesn't. Well, I'm just trying to figure out what part of, help me understand what part of the computer, where we could go, what we could do to bring in that income, because what you threw out was, it sounds good to bring all this in, but I think as a board member, I need help understanding more clearly exactly what you're saying.
Okay, the marketing aspects, often an item becomes obsolete. For example, a person retires. Well, they still have residual use.
Yeah, but I'm talking about
and value.
The person. I'm talking about the computer.
Okay, computer. So you want to specifically think in terms of a computer.
Yeah, because that's what we're talking about.
Well, let's suppose that your system, that Harvard University moves to 128 byte system, a processor. Well, all of those 64s are absolutely perfect for many institutions. Many institutions are operating on 32. That's very sophisticated. Many are operating on 16 because they don't have to process that fast. And it's absolutely ideal. So the market's sort of additional use of an item, what becomes one organization's trash, can just be hauled away, but it can become another organization, highly sophisticated, their treasure. Right. So a computer, a phone, for example, I recently sold a 512 gigabyte phone that was just not, it was 2 generations out. Well, for some people, that phone is 5 generations up from what they're using. So it still has a life, and it'll go on maybe 5 years. So I could consider it trash, and I could say, well, dispose of this entire inventory, and it costs a lot of money. Let's say all the cell phones in our school district. Well, that's worth a lot of money if somebody is tracking it, if they're paying attention to it. And it's just a source of revenue. I mean, we want every $1 million counts. We only have 700 million to work with. So when you're dealing with something that say, we're getting rid of $5 million and it's of no value to us, but it's worth perhaps 20% on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar. So suddenly we're talking about, on our budget, we're talking about $140 million.
Right, but I'm still unclear on what part of the computer that you're talking about that can be looked at and salvaged when they say there's an E-Way program where we are receiving money. So maybe I'm still unclear.
Is maximizing money,
but is there, but what I'm saying, is there proof that it hasn't been maximized? Because I'm hearing that they are saying that they have a program that's working. You're saying, no, it's not working, there's something else. And I'm asking you what that something else is because I'm unclear and as a board member, I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, let me help to clarify. What I'm saying is that value is value. And a computer, for example, can be used, let's just for sake of this discussion, let's say it can be used as a computer. Maybe it's a 64K computer, and it is appropriate for the use at your alma mater, let's say. Okay, there's other schools that perhaps could use the ones that your alma mater is discarding, okay? It's prudent. When you're talking about these large dollars, it's prudent to pay attention to the value to someone else. It's marketing. Perhaps I'm overdoing my degrees in marketing. There is always a buyer, and that buyer, the value is based on the buyer. Today's stock market will tell you what General Motors is worth. As it goes down, for example, and Tesla goes up, for example, it's worth more to somebody. You want to maximize your value.
But are we sure that E-Way doesn't, you said that, so does E-Way not do that?
Well, we're not sure, and that's the beauty of innovation. Often, when you innovate, it appears to be criticism of the past, and it really, truly is not.
No, it's not. No, I'm not criticizing. I'm just asking for clarity because I don't understand exactly what you were asking, and I was searching and trying to figure out what, because believe me, if we can do that, I would love to know what that is, and that's why I asked for your direction. What exactly is that? Because you sounded like you have a great idea, so I'm just curious what that great idea, what that is.
What it would be is, let's suppose that you have 100 school buses, let's suppose. Or you want to stay on computers?
Wait, no, computers. We're talking about computers, so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I want to stay focused on that.
All right, we'll stay with computers. Let's suppose you have 1,000 computers, or 10,000, whatever it is. We have 44,000. Most of the kids use computers. So when we change at a pretty, a bulk level. They begin to have very low value to us, because we're bringing in something different, something perhaps newer, and so we've got that value. The value for us drops dramatically, but the value of the item does not drop dramatically based on the market. Now, it takes someone. You can't be in charge of, for example, running the boneyard on computers. You can't be the technological, the software, that you can't do that and also be the expert over here on marketing. I mean, it's just about impossible for a career choice. I'm saying that if we have I saw some numbers, let's say $35 million. Let's just say half of that, a price of a new computer might drop by half, let's say. And so it's prudent on our end to perhaps have a $70,000 or $100,000 employee that could render back to us, let's say $10 million. That would be a third of that original cost, and it's very exciting to me. $10 million matters, and I know it matters to you. So if that helps you understand, somebody has to understand the market, because it's not apparent if you're not in that business. But if you are in that business, it's absolutely incredible, and I guarantee you that business exists. Whether it's busting it down into components after it's gone through 2 or 3 stages, but it's just too easy to look at it as trash because for your purposes, it is trash. However, for someone else's purposes, it's treasure. And it's a 50% discount on something that processes too fast already. And then somebody down here at 30% of the speed of a computer, it's a treasure, a total treasure. And they're picking it up for 10 cents on the dollar from the secondary market. So if that helps you understand, you don't finally go to the graveyard in technical components until you actually get to that. And that's parts and taking things apart. If you're teaching, you can, I know in appliances, this is a big deal. And we have a lot of appliance type products. In order to teach repair, which is a huge industry, in order to teach it, you must take things apart.
Yeah, they said they do.
I know.
Right.
So I'm saying the market is there. So the beautiful part is you can't be in the technical keeping track. I think we're keeping really good track. Matter of fact, we've got them down to individual codes. But think how exciting this is. You've kept track of it. You've used it. You've had the full cycle. Now you just say, oh, there's a market. Oh, isn't that exciting? Well, how about we explore that market with an expert?
What is the market? That's what I've been asking. What is this market that you're talking about?
Well, perhaps I can explain it this way. There's a market for new cars. There's a market for used cars. If you want to know exactly the location of a used car lot, that would be perhaps at one level, but you don't need to know that. You just need to know that there is a market for used cars. Then there's a market for, you might call older, and that falls into perhaps, I mean, for example, I have a Model A Ford. The price actually goes up, you know, on those things, collectors, that type of thing.
We're talking about computers.
Well, I'm trying to analogously help you with it. So with computers, for example, I've gone down that line. Cornell may use 64 or 128 bits. Someone else, your alma mater, might use 32 bits. Who knows? And as they move down, then a high school somewhere might be using it for another purpose, or slower is just fine at another school, you know, like that. So it's a market, and you get paid. And once you get paid, Ms. Boston Ellis takes the money, puts it in a general fund, and it spends like any other money. It's exciting.
Yeah, but I think she said they did that. So that's why this whole thing, I've been confused, but I'll drop it. I was just confused, and I can't say I really understand exactly where that market is or what is different, but.
I got Vice Chair Campbell, then Board Member Thrower.
Okay, thank you. I have 2 questions. My first one is specific to tangible assets and the count that we have on tangible assets. And then my second question is going to come back over here to some things that I've just heard. So I show listed 15,000 tangible assets. My question is, where are all of our almost one-to-one Chromebooks counted in that number? Because if we're thinking one-to-one, that potentially is getting us up 20, 30, 40,000 Chromebooks. Seems like our tangible asset number would be different than that, and maybe that's maybe we're not counting them that way, I'm not sure.
Right, so this only includes items that are $1,000 or more, and many of the Chromebooks are under 1,000, so it's tracked at the school level using Destiny.
Okay, all right, that answered that question, thank you. Back on the thought process that Mr. Browning has, which he very well may be an innovator and coming up with something that no one else has, but knowing that we are one of 67 school districts in the state and one of thousands of school districts around the country, have you heard of anything like this? I don't want to use the term black market because that's not the right word, but have you heard this underground interest in, I understand the exact thought process and the ability to potentially be able to resell some of our outdated, what we see as outdated equipment, outdated computers, outdated whatever that might be. But again, thousands of school districts around the country have the exact same disposal of tangible products that we're talking about. So have you heard of other districts that are selling it more or doing it better than we've been doing it? I mean,
Yes, I can answer that question. So last summer, I did contact other school districts around the state of Florida, and out of that research that I did work with Information Technology Services, and we continue on an ongoing basis to try to maximize the funds coming back. And right now, in addition to a local facility, we also recently started using one that Volusia County uses from Tampa. And just yesterday, the local facility also sent me a new pricing sheet. So we are keeping an eye on it, and we're trying to maximize every bit of revenue that we possibly can.
those were my questions.
Thank you. Board Member Thora.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this great presentation. It does raise a lot of thoughts in my mind as well, because markets do change. And I'm thinking about probably almost 4 years ago now, recycling had a good market, especially for cardboard and paper and things like that. And I was able to capitalize on that for our condo community, and we were getting paid, and we had, trash parties, and, the money went into our social fund. So it was really fun to see some of that coming back to us. Well, then that market tanked, and it got to the point where we were going to have to pay them to come and pick up our stuff, which was so frustrating at many levels. But anyway, so that's my example, an illustration of the change in markets. I'm also thinking about, as we sit here as board members, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, I have an iPhone 7. And there's probably someone sitting on either side of me that has an iPhone, what's your number?
13.
12.
13.
Do I hear 14? Is there a 14? Okay, so in this situation, I look on eBay and I can find, refurbished phones for a less expensive price than a brand new one. I also know that I'm up against the wall with my little 7, because it's getting to the point every time I try to update it, it struggles harder and harder and harder. And I certainly would never support having any of our schools have up-to-date technology and equipment, and then the not-so-up-to-date equipment goes where now? No, not to any other school in the district that I serve. So I see that as a non-starter. What I would really like to know is, are there industries, what are the names of those industries, if they are out there, that are markets that we have not yet explored for our obsolete equipment? And if they're out there, great. I can't imagine that this board wouldn't fully support that, but I am a little bit already convinced that y'all are already doing that, and being sensitive to the market changes and being attentive to those kinds of things, because that's what we pay you to do, and we appreciate the hard work that you put in. Thank you.
And listen, thank you. This has been some spirited discussion about how you guys have been disposing of the tangible property and e-wasting everything. I have been out there and I saw how you've taken materials from our district and taken them to the bare bone. And by the time it gets to where it's going, it's really nothing more than anybody can do with it. And I would dare to say that if there is a company or entity that is out there that wanted that, they would have already reached out to us because they're in the business of making money as well. So they would have been already reaching out to us to get those things. But I do know, and I've watched the process on some of these things, and when you look at the pictures right here in our presentation, you can see it's not like they're giving a bus that is still has seats and motors and all that kind of stuff in it. Most of the time, to get it to the auction, it has to be towed over there.
Yes,
Am I right, Chico? Am I right?
Yes, sir. We cannibalize these buses right down to the bare minimum, which over the years, we have saved this district an enormous amount of money.
Right.
Putting it back. Now, Paul that's taken over, me and him have spoke briefly, and I'm going to back up in time. We couldn't buy buses on a regular basis due to different things. So we're just now getting to the point in the district on a buying cycle to take out some of these buses. There will probably come a point in the future that you won't have to cannibalize like this. You could take these buses and put them back as a running bus on the market. And like today that you have your used cars, because there's a high demand for it. It's the same thing come with school buses, because you have some districts that can't afford the new ones. So these buses that still meet DOE specifications and they're not as old, you could resell them and get a lot more money out of them.
Right.
But the situation we've been in for years, we've had to do the way we've been doing in order to operate and save money.
Right. And I've seen it. And it may not have come back into the district as a stream of revenue, but it's saved the district money because we had a source that was right there where we can pull apart. If we need an alternator or we need a seat or a visor, whatever, we had a ready source that was still in the district that we didn't have to go buy that part because we were cannibalizing the bus. So we didn't receive that money in a stream of revenue, but it was a cost savings to the district.
Yeah, enormous.
So I appreciate what you're saying, and I understand it. I understand Mr. Browning's question, but I do know, even with the computers and stuff, when they're done, there's really. I'm a church. I have a church. I would not want a computer from the district, an old computer from the district, because it's going to be obsolete, and I can't really. There's no system I can put on it, or upgrade, or anything like that. So there may be some companies out there that want that stuff. But I'm sure they would be reaching out to us because that material would be that valuable to them.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, and they call this a workshop, which is great. There's been some excellent thought processes that come up, and that's how you achieve progress. I'm especially Vice Chair's comment. What are those called? Crumb machines? What is that? Chromebooks. So we've got 40,000.
I mean, we're almost at 1-to-1 ratio every student.
So a beautiful in a workshop. Here we are talking about 40,000. Ms. King was asking for examples. There's a perfect example. So what does one of those cost roughly? Does anybody know?
Under 1,000.
$267.
$267? Okay. So I guarantee you, if there's a technological change, a major change, and we make a change in a $200 item if we're buying in bulk, we make a change, a 25% would be, do the math, 40,000, 10 would be 400,000 or $500,000. It would be enormous. That type of tracking for just a single item would be Ms. Boston Ellis, I see her smiling. I mean, she would love those dollars. Every $1 million helps to make up, you only need 700 to run the whole place. So every $1 million, and you could take 24 different little categories and make it the equivalent of this ad valorem tax that we're talking about, for example. And we may spend, say, bringing in 30 million, we may spend $1 million in salaries with some experts. To me, it's a no-brainer because we generate this opportunity in our operation. So, boy, I love the idea of a workshop.
Thank you.
Workshop is is the proper term, and we do get to answers because we got the brains out there. You guys see it, and perhaps from all this discussion, there's some ideas popping into your heads right now, and I noticed that you've come up with several references to progress already, like the Volusia County and the Tampa reference. So that was something that didn't exist until you took that initiative and you stepped forward. And perhaps you can share that going forward with some other districts that wouldn't have a clue what we're doing. But if we make some real progress on this, suddenly you'll be at the top of the totem pole in terms of the most innovative district in the state of Florida.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your comments. You guys gave a wonderful presentation. And again, Chico, congratulations on your retirement, and we're going to move forward to the next item. Okay. I think risk management is here, Mr. Norwood, Terry Norwood.
Yep.
I'm sorry, any public comment on disposition of tangible property process?
To our board chair and the board.
Morning.
And our superintendent, morning to each of you. I appreciate your focused discussion on the last item because it took enough time that our presenters were finally able to arrive.
Thank you.
My apologies to you for being late this morning. I do have reasons and excuses for that, none of which are good. However, our presenters were tied up on the interstate, unable to move forward or back.
We understand there was a huge traffic accident, and we do understand that 75 was shut down.
All right.
So I understand. So don't worry about your excuses. Just get us out of here fast.
All right, so fasten your seatbelts and let me introduce to you Mr. Benfew and Mr. Benfew, who are here to take you through the renewals for the business insurance for the next fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Norwood. I'm glad to see that you got here safely.
Yes.
And we appreciate that. And again, apologize for the delay.
Can't control traffic.
Completely shut down, so.
Can't control.
File an insurance claim if you had a problem.
Good idea. All right. I'm Benfew the Fourth of Benfew and Company. Again, we appreciate you having us here, spend some time to go over the general insurance renewal that will be coming to you for approval later on in the month. Let's see what we got here. All right. I'm not going to read this slide to you.
I need you to pull the mic to you. There you go. Or lean into it.
All right. I won't read this slide to you. I'll just summarize a little bit about who we are. Benfew and Company is an independent insurance and risk management consulting firm formed in 1993. We work on a fee-only basis. We do not accept commissions. We do not have any ties to insurance carriers. We don't sell any insurance products. So the way that we work with our clients is one of we work as a supplement directly to your staff. We are like having an employee in the next office. So with that, we'll get to the really exciting stuff. Globally speaking, the current property insurance market has been hardening for a number of years now. We've had consecutive Atlantic hurricane seasons that have not been favorable to the marketplace, 17, 18, 19. Filling in the gaps would be the uncertainty that COVID-19 brings, as well as seemingly incessant wildfires on the west coast of the United States. Hurricane Ida last year did not help matters. And if you've been following along with discussions at the state level, though not directly related to commercial property markets, more in the personal realm, that also gives the marketplace pause. And I'll also add, if you've also been following the weather websites lately, tornadoes in the Midwest would seem to be the latest catastrophe that's befallen us that we'll be hearing about through this next renewal season. As casualty goes, generally speaking, it's a much more stable market, especially as it relates to self-insured public entities. In your situation, you retain a lot more of that loss up front and therefore control of the loss up front. So it's a more stable marketplace for an entity such as the district. I will say that you have not escaped unscathed from the cyber exposure that is out there, but that is not unique to Marion schools. It's not unique to really anyone. It's affecting literally anybody with an insurance policy. So we'll get more to that. The only thing that I can say really about your program, insofar as any changes have been made from year to year, is in the cyber liability policy, and we'll talk more about that. All right, this is the meat and potatoes of it and kind of the raw numbers, and I'll touch on a few highlights here. The rationale for why we do what we do is on another slide, and we can talk more about that when we get to it, but this just gives you kind of the detailed picture. Overall, I'm told I can't present any new information, but I will tell you that as of now, the numbers that I have are improved over this. I can say that. Yes, okay. So I have much better premium figures, that will be what is sent to you later on in the month for your approval. But in any event, property, as you can see, the first line is your big ticket item. You have over $1 billion in total insured value, and trend really for renewals in the last few years has been anywhere from 10 to 20%. The variance shown on this slide would fall right within trend. If to the low side, I can tell you it's better than that, what you will see when it comes for approval. As for the rest of the lines on the property side, we're largely stable. They are either flat renewals or nominal in terms of increase. There's not a lot of loss activity in the rest of those lines. We're in Florida, it's largely wind loss that drives that. On the casualty side, you can see your two big ticket items, although relatively small as compared with property, are the excess general and auto liability and work comp lines. And largely, those are within trend as well, but the increases are more due to increase in underlying exposure, which is it's par for the course. And I can also tell you again that the numbers I have here are better than what's being represented currently. Cyber liability, you can see I mentioned that exposure is being difficult. We do have a firm figure. It's quite a bit less than the premium represented by that column there. The major changes into terms and conditions. What cyber carriers are doing, because this is historically speaking a much more recent insurance product, there's not a ton of premium or loss experience in it like there would be with property or general liability, such that they can kind of level out premiums and increase rate and make themselves actuarially more sound in that way. They're forcing more upfront retention onto the insured. So that's largely where the changes come in your program. And to bring it all home, to simplify, your subtotals there you can see, $2.5 million, again, numbers much lower than that. But at a 15% increase, that would represent right in the middle of trend for an entity of this scope and size. For a little bit of context here, here's your premium history. With the last, the current year's premiums and the upcoming renewal, you're still under what your historical high has been. There have been some changes in the program itself, but largely your exposures are increasing. So we see this as a move toward a little bit more efficiency in the program. The loss fund replenishment. This is what you are using. You have an actuarial study done twice a year that takes all of your historical third-party and work comp losses and develops a figure in order to say, here's what our outstanding obligations would be in the event we were shut down at this particular date and time. So we use this study in order to fund the loss fund. Historically speaking, you funded 65% confidence. I suppose you could fund at 95%, but over time it is shown to be consistent in terms of replenishment. The figure on the 65% side, where we have funding deficit there, is historically always been between 1 and 2 million. Sometimes it even dips below. And what that's telling you is the lower it is, the more efficiently claims are being handled. So what we like to see is something a little bit closer to 1 million. And it also takes into account your retained loss and any changes to that. And that's another portion that I think is very important here. We'll talk about in a little bit. Maintaining your current retention levels is a good thing. It makes for consistency. All right, so here's the why we do what we do. Your total insured value increased or will increase as of this renewal by just under $14 million. That's just projects, they're being CO'd, cafeteria wings, what have you, all throughout the building list that we get from that department throughout the year in various stages. As of 7/1/22, that will be $14 million higher. The reason you select a loss limit of $50 million is because statistically speaking, we run a analysis each year using RMS software, which takes building construction characteristics, secondary characteristics, roof shape, roof type, distance to water, distance to fire hydrant, et cetera, and so forth, geographical location, and we develop a probable maximum loss so that you can substantiate the limits that you carry, as opposed to insuring for the entire $1 billion, which would be extremely cost prohibitive. So what this is telling you, what this year's PML is telling you, is that in the event of a 250-year storm, your loss limit, your total expected loss would be $33.5 million. So carrying that $50 million loss limit, you're comfortably within, both from an insurance standpoint, a loss recovery standpoint, and a marketability standpoint. The other reason we want to do that is in the event that you have to submit any claims to FEMA, as you have in the past. We used to have to submit requests for evaluation of reasonableness of the program to the OIR, and you used to carry $100 million. That was prior to having a proper replacement cost appraisal that captured all of that secondary building information. And so after being able to capture that data, we were able to show, statistically speaking, that there really was no reason to carry $100 million. You were spending a lot of money that really didn't need to be spent, so that's what allowed us to drop it to 50. They don't do reasonableness certifications anymore, FEMA being, but what they've done is they've sort of changed their attitude. If you submit to them and they don't like what they see, they previously made it clear in no uncertain terms that you need to have at least this loss limit, and you also need to carry terrorism coverage. That's another, I don't want to say peculiarity, but a unique thing about your program. You carry terrorism coverage on the property, and they made it very clear to us that that was going to be a mandatory requirement. Were they going to pay out any claims for relief? As casualty exposures for the district go, again, it's largely the concern at this point, from a market standpoint, is cyber liability. Your retention has been increased as of this next renewal from $100,000 to $125,000, which is not terrible, and the premium has been increased somewhat. They've also decreased the limit from $2 million to $1 million, but this is not a unique situation. This is happening to everyone. Cyber carriers literally will not entertain new business if you don't have certain things in place, certain security protocols. Multi-factor authentication is something that's getting thrown around a lot. Endpoint data recognition is something that's getting thrown around a lot. We've had some very productive conversations with IT and logistics, and we've assured the marketplace that they are very conscientious, as they are. But in order to get just this renewal, we had to make some concessions to them such that retention was higher, limit was cut. They could not get another carrier to even quote the account. So it's a difficult market for that exposure, though it's not an enormous line item compared to property, let's say. The guardian and law enforcement exposure was something that was talked about pretty heavily before the COVID pandemic took over and kind of took a back burner to that. I have a feeling that conversation has already been raging here and will continue. However, from an insurance cost standpoint, the costs associated with guardians and law enforcement have been minimal to date. So not a lot of concern on that end. You do have the coverage, and I just also wanted to point out, when you maintain active duty law enforcement, you are subject to the Heart-Lung Act and certain death benefits as prescribed by statute. The district still carries active shooter coverage. Again, cost is pretty nominal, all things considered, and that was put in place as of 2019. So having said that, the proposed action plan is to renew the insurance program as recommended and replenish the loss fund as the actuaries have recommended. We continue with contractual review and risk mitigation through evaluation of any of the new exciting programs that come up through curriculum, and as a school district, of course, that everything is exciting here. We'll continue to work with the actuaries to determine appropriate loss fund requirements, refine the statement of values as we go, and get ready for it all next year. And of course, advise on any legislative updates as they relate to the insurance program, cyber being one of them. So as that develops, we will certainly keep you in the loop. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Field. Ms. Thor, Board Member Thor.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Just to clarify, OIR, is that Office of Internal Revenue?
Office of Insurance Regulation.
Office of Insurance Regulation, that makes more sense. Okay. You know, we love our acronyms in education, too.
I'm sorry, I get neck deep in it, try to save a little time.
No, I appreciate it. And that was really my only other question. Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Okay.
Attorney Powers.
Can I have you go back 2 slides on what you've got here? To the law enforcement program, the insurance coverage.
Yes.
I just want to be assured that, and for the board to be assured that the coverage that we're paying for, we have one sworn certified law enforcement officer. That's only as to him. I want to make sure we're not duplicating coverage that OPD or Marion County Sheriff's Officer currently.
Yes, sir. That is based on one sworn officer. As I say, the cost has been nominal to date. I believe it was about $1,000 to update your program. It's been, again, it's a small exposure in and of itself, an important one, but the cost is nominal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see. I always like progress, and you brought up California and these various, a lot of this is political losses, because I also follow the value of the insurance market and insurance companies and the reinsurance world, and they're doing quite well. Often it's what we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and it tends to sell insurance. I'd like you to use your expertise to perhaps describe a path toward greater value. If you were on this board, a path toward greater value, and then perhaps counter that with a path toward greater danger and a problematic, likely statistically problematic outcome that you've seen professionally. I would just like to make progress on our costs and self-insure when it's potential, and I'd like to know about what our worst case scenario to date, rather than worry with the with external actuarial estimates, because there's a lot baked into that. So with your expertise, if you could go down those and perhaps we just think in terms of increased value or increased risk in those two arguments?
Increased value is going to come from a proactive approach on the ground. That's preventing losses and seeing the potential for loss before it takes place, and putting a stop to it via safety, via safe schools, via guardians, contractual risk transfer to third-party vendors. Taking a proactive approach is going to get you it's less value and more efficiency, because we're talking about fortuitous loss. So really the best way you can handle that is to take a proactive approach in all realms throughout the enterprise in order to make sure that your program is running as efficiently as possible. The path to ruin, I will say, is for an organization that gets too large to take on or to just completely put the program off on its insurers, who, as you say, kind of use the fear to stoke the fire of increased market value for themselves. Because what happens is the ownership for said claims and exposures is not, I mean, they're your claims, they're your exposures. You benefit from controlling those. That's why the self-insurance program, that's why the TPA answers to you. At an organization of your size, if you were to engage in a first dollar program, I fear the road to ruin would be realized, because you would experience that claim and there would be no one held accountable to you or ultimately to your pocketbook for the losses that are paid out. Typically we see in situations where you're talking about first dollar versus self-insuring, in 12 months' time, the value of claims goes down 20%. So maintaining that control when you have the resources to do so is the path to the light. That's what I will say. Again, value, nobody likes insurance and nobody likes to pay for it, but it's all about efficiency. We can use these things to fight market forces. We can use the proactive approach. We can use them to say, hey, here's what we're doing so that we can get the best price and the best product that's available. To a certain extent, the market kind of is what it is. It is a people business, and if they won't write you, they won't write you. So it's best to go in with everything, with all your ducks in a row, being able to prove to them that you're a worthy risk.
Yeah,
kind of all over the place.
Mostly interested in the casualty side of things, and I think we're on our game. I don't think our casualty risk is that high, and when you look at the numbers, ultimately, self-insuring is simply an assumption of your own risks, and then the portion that you might want to move out to a third party, that's fine. And I think we all do this in our private lives. At some point, you must take on insurance, even unreasonable insurance, because you have a mortgage and it's written into the mortgage, for example. However, we don't have that problem. And so we can get very realistic, and putting money into that general fund and having it as large as possible is our goal. We want Ms. Boston-Ellis to have adequate funds when she writes the checks. So what my question is really on this casualty side, how close are we? Can we prudently move, in your professional opinion, can we prudently move into a more secure position long-term?
Risk averse or risk
yes, and forget, right, carry the risk, because often the risk is nowhere near what it's purported to be.
You'd like to carry
alibi your ideas in California, and the global warming nonsense that's going on, and that type of thing where it's being used to increased fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and problematic and crisis, that type of thing. In other words, if it's sort of phony, we self-insure. to the extent it's not phony and statistically not phony, we go there. And we let somebody carry that, and then maybe they toss it off to Lloyd's, for example. So, to another party. So, from your point of view, can you guide us toward more money in our pocket with mitigating unnecessary risk, or lower value risk, if you will? Some risks high, like active shooter, that type of thing, and our police, that's very minimal. It's fine. You know, I have no problem. I don't even want to spend time on it. But some of this big is, and with the kind of increases, we haven't had the increased loss. So we're paying somebody else's casualty bill is what it amounts to. So I would like to get us, if we've been flat, then I want to stay flat, and I want to go in that direction if we can do it. And we have an expert here, so I'm looking for some professional guidance out of this forest of just paying somebody else's risk.
Well, you carry a $50 million loss limit based on that statistical analysis. We've dropped $50 million in insurance over the course of the last 10 years from that loss limit. That's what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's where I want to get, because if we were paying first dollar, it would be to ruin, as you indicated.
Yes, right.
It would be a disaster. It's just not prudent.
Okay.
So where can we go? What can we do? You know, especially as the industry is tending to go in a, let's say, I'm just going to call it a fictitious kind of a global out there huge crisis. Oh my gosh! Oh, look at how bad it is. And of course, they're biased. You know, they're taking in the premium.
Well, let's see. There's a lot to go in with this. Your loss limit is substantiated. If you're saying that you want to drop it, I'm sure we could look into that. But how close do you want to come to it? And how close do you want to come to being denied FEMA funds in the event that something that you've cut and then was available to you from a reasonableness standpoint that you didn't want to carry? The other thing is that your TIV is increasing. It increases every year. And we've maintained the current loss limit for at least 5 or 6 years now, despite growth in total insured value. So I would say that efficiency-wise, you are doing exactly and performing exactly in the way that you want to be. Sure.
Can we do better? Can we do better in your estimation?
I'm Ben Few III. I'm the principal and founder of the firm. If we could move the slide back to the graph. Who's in charge of that? Are we?
We're in charge of that.
All right. As you can see, this is premium history. It's only a few years. But if you notice the blue bar, that's your property. This is cost. This is premium history. So this is a property-driven premium. And what we have to deal with there is the deductible amount and the loss limit. So we have focused in. I mean, we could always increase the deductible, but I don't believe on that side of the program you'll receive enough credit to warrant it. So that's property. Now, all the rest of those bars, that's the casualty area. So you can see there's not the premium in the casualty area that there is in property. However, to answer your question on casualty directly, as a public entity, we have sovereign immunity for state claims. So we can only we only pay up to $200,000 per claim under sovereign immunity. It's $200 per person, $300 per occurrence. So we're limited there. We buy excess insurance on top of that for federal claims or claims bill that might penetrate and go to legislation because of tremendous negligence on one of our members' parts or something like that. So the rates we use and rates we seek take into consideration that we have the sovereign immunity. So we're not being charged just like we were a contractor with no immunity at all would be charged 15 times what the school district pays in relationship. Now, on that, we have a retention as well. So this is where the fund, we're trying to balance this fund out to keep it as consistently as possible based on your retention. That's the self-insurance part. And there's a difference, first of all, in self-insurance and no insurance. Self-insurance is a fully funded program with excess insurance. That's what we have. That's what the state requires. But the only areas that we can improve, and when I say improve, it comes with assumption of more risk, is to increase retention. And I really, the way this program has played out, as you can see, if we had made that go back 15 years, you would see where you are in the development of your program, and quite frankly, it's fantastic. This school district is doing a tremendous job in its risk management. And what we feel, what we're bringing to you is, I mean, by program design, is the most efficient program.
Boy, you touch on it here. So if we go to 2013-14, some brilliant moves were made, and I love that ski slope. I don't like it when we're talking about the quality of education, but I love it when it's expenses, especially theoretic, statistical risk expenses. So some great things were going on. How do we get back into great ideas, great things going on? I want to turn that goal line down, just like we did in 2013 by a previous board. I think Board Member King was the only one here when we made that beautiful move. Is there anything that you see professionally we can do to reinstate what we did in 2013?
There's a totally different, it's difficult to make that comparison. And I'd start off by saying there's no silver bullet. We're working very hard to keep your program on the cutting edge every day. We're doing it. And again, as I say, if we went back even further in arrears, that graph goes like this and then takes a dip right there at the 2013 year and then comes down again. And a lot of that is also controlled by the state of the market. That's why Ben went through the market conditions, because you have a soft market and a hard market. Soft market, those premiums come down. Well, when it applied, 10% on the property is like equal to 90% on the casualty because of the size of the property premium. So the thing that's driving that graph, quite frankly, if you look at first the casualty bars, the low ones, they're very consistent, okay? Meaning that the school district is doing an excellent job on that. That premium, that dip in 2013 is because we went into a soft market. It wasn't anything you did, it was we went into a soft market.
But the soft market and hard market is I'm just going to put a component to it, is political. It's a political world. We see that in the home market that our communities are addressing. And we see it in some of the fraud associated with roofing. And we see it with some of the issues associated with global warming, that kind of, I call it political fear-mongering. So we see it, and you can self-insure it because if it's phony, it's phony, if you can handle the casualty loss. So I'm asking, this is exciting, it's a workshop. I'd like to know how we turn that line down on the blue line. I don't like cost lines going up. I'd like to see if you've got any ideas for us turning that slope back down to when Ms. King came on the board.
Well, I think, hold on, Mr. Few, from what I'm hearing, from what I've heard you just say, you've already stated that we're at a very efficient place right now.
Very much so.
And there is, we're doing good. We're great. We're where we need to be. I don't see where else we're going to do anything. The graph is just self-explanatory. It's properties and it's different things.
Can we do better? I think professionally, can we do better? Mr.
Browning, he just stated that we were at he just went through this, and I heard him say it twice, that we were at a very efficient place for this. So I want to see where else, I mean, you keep bringing in the politics to this. We got to pay, we got a bill, we got to have to do it anyway. We got to have insurance. So why are we kind of going down that road? That's what I'm not understanding.
Well, dollars, Chair, if I still have the floor, dollars matter, and we're mitigating risk. And we have professionals here, and I want to hear specifically, what would you do if you were sitting on this board?
Well,
that type of thing, and is there any possibility of reinstituting the downward slope?
Well, there's a lot of variables on your downward slope, and we can't control all of them. The political, for one. Now, Ben mentioned the most that we can do as a school district is be proactive and with our safety programs and with our safety protocols altogether, with, building envelopes, visitors on campus, right down to the quality of the food you're serving in cafeterias. That's basically all we have to work with are the losses, the loss fund.
So property, we don't have much, you don't see any opportunity.
If you drop, the only opportunity you have on property to have control over what you're going to pay is to drop the value. But you only have we've already dropped it twice, I believe, was it?
We've gone from $100 million to 75 to 50. And the reason you did that is because you finally had a replacement cost appraisal put in place to capture the data that you needed to capture on the proactive side of things to substantiate a statistical analysis that would allow you to justifiably carry the limit that you are carrying. You could stop building schools.
We'd like to start.
That's within your control, but I've just, your TIV is going up at 14 million. So that's not really helping the situation, if I'm perfectly honest.
You're saying we are efficient. That's
Yes.
what you're saying.
Yes.
We are efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, for saying that 3 times. Thank you. Any other board comments? Any public comment? I'm sorry.
Just one
Go to the
thing.
store.
And thanks again. As I was listening to the conversation, a lot of my questions were answered, which a lot of times is what happens, But I'm thinking about in terms of, I know in the mortgage world, if you're a very good credit risk, then you don't have extra expense tacked on like PMI, the private mortgage insurance and things like that increase costs. And I feel like what I've gotten out of this conversation is that we have been very proactive and we were able to take advantage of a soft market years ago and capitalize on that also by reducing the level of cost. But now we're sitting in a different time, and I certainly don't like sitting here looking at, because I feel like what I'm hearing is that it's going to be $1,134,000 increase, right? Is that what we're looking at?
Well, overall, your increase, both between property and casualty, is just over 9%. Because I have newer numbers here that I'm not allowed to get specific about. I understand.
Okay, so it's going to be less than $1 million.
Your increase overall from year to year for the entire program is about $200,000.
That's a much better number.
Right.
Still wish it was lower, but that's a lot better number. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment? All right. Thank you, guys, for the presentation. Thank you. And please be safe going back.
Yes.
Out there on the road. It's that time of the year where people are driving crazy. So again, board comments. Ms. Nicole Presbitino, anything? Attorney Powers?
No, sir.
Dr. Gullett?
Nothing additional, thank you, sir.
Board members? Ms. King?
Yes, I would like to ask, is it possible for us to have an updated work session, but preferably in shade with the school safety department, just to review and look, because as a board, we know that our first priority is the safety and protection and well-being of all of our students. I think this is a good time for us just to have that meeting with our safety department, review anything that may be addressed, because I most certainly want us to be proactive and look ahead and see if there's any exposures or anything that may need to be addressed.
Board Member King, I was going to ask for the same thing. Attorney Powers?
Yes, those executive sessions, which are not subject to sunshine law and are excluded and exempt from sunshine law, may be called at any time without notice by the director of safe schools or the superintendent, for that matter. Specifically, the one caveat that I would have, and I will always recommend as your attorney, is that if we call a meeting for the purpose of, for example, school safety, everything discussed at that meeting needs to revolve centrally around a particular threats or strategies or things that would be considered exempt. They can't obviously address such things as cost issues or other items, and so that would not be our purpose for going in.
Correct.
It would be, we would have to keep it extremely narrow, focused, and limited. So yes.
Correct. And how soon could we have one?
I can approach the director of safe schools and find out as
Today?
soon as we can.
Seems like we're about to get out of here early today. Is that possible? I know Mr. McFadden is probably here.
I'll discuss with Mr. McFadden, and since we do have all the board members here, I don't have there is no required notice. So whether that's today, next week, or some other time,
He's right here.
that will be right. And I'm not going to discuss it publicly. Right.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Are we saying today?
We will.
I'm not going to discuss nor announce publicly when we're having any meeting regarding a school safety issue because it specifically is exempt from sunshine law.
Correct.
Shade.
Right.
So when we go off air, we can,
Then we can.
I'll look into it
Right.
and get back with the board.
okay.
Go ahead, Ms. King.
Okay, and that's all that I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thor?
Thank you, Chair, and yes, Board Member King, that was the exact thing that was on my mind as well. And let's see. Just a couple of quick things. I'm looking forward to Vanguard High School's graduation on Friday. Should be a lot of fun, always is. And also, too, I learned a little something about impact fees. It's been asked to me from different citizens. We can certainly look around and see the need for more schools in our areas where we have the localized overcrowding. And I've been asked the question of why do we have to do a 6-month study when all we have to do is look out the back door and see what we need. My understanding is that that's statute-driven, that we have to do that. So that means we have to wait another 6 months to get justification to help us make a decision at that point, what we want to do about that. I was also pretty interested to hear from the private enterprise side of things that they recognize how important it is, not just for our schools to be high quality, but also our hospitals and all of those services that people that are moving here at the tune of a lot every week expect and need. So the need for housing is critical. And my understanding anyway is that the developers understand that, they see that dynamic. So they were very appreciative of 12 years ago when the impact fee was stopped because there was literally nothing going on and people were losing their shirts. But it's a new market, a new day. And I just wanted to thank the private developer community for continuing to support us and being so willing to partner with us. You were here at the last work session, and that certainly meant a lot to me as a board member. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Browning?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, let's see, first item is this just came up, but I saw that there was some things handed out on a summer conference. I'm not familiar with it, and I haven't gotten anything from Board Services, but I would like to have information, Superintendent, if I may.
Browning,
Yes, sir.
I'll address that in a minute.
Okay, well, I'm saying things are being handed out already, so,
I'll address that in a minute.
well, thank you, but do I still have the floor, sir?
I'll address that when it gets to me. And I'm sure it'll answer your question.
You still have the floor, yes, to answer.
Yes, you still have the floor.
Thank you, thank you. So I would just like to have that information, in a timely manner, ongoing. Second item that I have is, and it falls into the safety world, is our Stanton Weirsdale update from District 2. We've been addressing this survey problem, and I think we've made headway in how that survey has kind of perpetuated itself. It's become like a permanent blot on that road, 135th Ave, that runs alongside the school. So I think we're making headway there, and that will lend itself, number one, to safety, and that's a big deal. That's just like a report to the board. My third item is this: we're making headway, and when I walk on the stage, and now we're moving halfway across the stage, I would like to see us perhaps hold a discussion and continue in that direction and continue in this direction with the podium. I see no reason for us. We were at 64 feet. Now we're a little over 30 feet, and I see us being able to be at exactly the same distance we were for the last 20 years at our previous setup. I don't see any value to this, and I see a huge problem associated with eyesight and with hearing and communication, and that's really why we have speakers, and it's why we have a board. I would like them to be as close as we are to each other, because we can hear one another, and we don't have to go through an electronic system, come back on hard this way when the person's right in front of us. So if we can go another, say with the board's indulgence, 15 feet, and we can come this way, then anybody that needs electronic information, and I love that monitor, and I know the people out there do love the monitor as well. I believe we can get us, even though this is probably temporary, we could get to a much, much more efficient position. Let's see. I'm troubled by the change in really, it's the people that are calling me, and I said, what changed on the demographics that we've been receiving, like we received earlier this year, the demographics on students and the demographics in our area on property building. The slope goes up in terms of folks coming here and our property values. The slope nationwide is flat, and demographically it's flat. Now, with maybe a change, something, I can't predict the future, maybe a Roe versus Wade change or something, we may have student population growth. The demographics might change. But right now it's flat, but yet I'm seeing and I'm hearing when we have in our previous workshops that it's like a tsunami. Perhaps that was the newspaper just exaggerating, but a tsunami of students. And I just don't see that as the case. If it is different than that, and if we because we're struggling with dollars, and ultimately value is the issue. You've got to pay for what you get. And if it's a flat line, then it's a flat line. I'm just not convinced. And so I'd like to reassure, at least from this board member, for my district, reassure the population and perhaps the newspapers that I don't see this tsunami. It just doesn't exist on the statistics that I look at, nationally and locally. Thank you. That'll conclude my remarks, Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Browning. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you so much. So a couple of things Ms. Thrower touched on, or what I've had on my mind, as well as I'll just touch a bit on to what Mr. Browning just noted, because it's all related in some ways. One of the comments Mr. Browning just made is that he sees this being at MTI or on this stage being potentially temporary for us. That kind of goes into a bit of what I wanted to ask as well. But let me first touch on what has changed, because that was what he had asked a few times. So one thing that I think that you can appreciate, Mr. Browning, that I think has changed with families moving to our community is politically. The governor that we have in place right now and the way things were handled during the pandemic, I think, honestly, we have people moving here from Canada and New England and all sorts of parts of the country, and I see it all the time in the Parents of Marion County group, people commenting, I'm moving to such and such, I'm moving here, I'm moving there, which school should I look at for next year, which school should I consider, and it's not just one or two. I mean, we're talking by the dozens and potentially even hundreds that we're seeing. That's one piece of this, and so while it may not necessarily be a tsunami, perhaps, that's one piece of this conversation. The second piece of the conversation is where these individuals are moving to. And just in general, the growth that is occurring in our county as a whole is all within the urban growth boundary. And I don't know that our school system has ever looked at where our schools are located in conjunction to the urban growth boundary, where the county is approving projects as well as where the city of Ocala has said in their 2035 plan, these are where we're putting new growth and development. I don't know that we as a school district, at least in the recent past, have looked at urban growth boundary, where our schools are located, and the capacity issues that each one of those schools might have should development actually come where the county and the city has been saying for years that they're wanting to put it. So while it might not necessarily be an entire tsunami saying we might go to 50,000 students, though we just saw 2 weeks ago that statistics are showing that we might get there, the birth rate is flat. 100% birth rate is flat. But I know of families that have moved to town with 5 children that are 5 and under that are all going to be in our school system in the next couple of years. So while their children aren't being born here, they're bringing children with them whenever they're moving to town. And so I understand the birth rate is flat, but I do also understand that the growth potential that could be coming to our community, and we need to be preparing and planning for that should that be the case, because we certainly don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we could have done something as a board member right now. I can't speak for previous boards and decisions they made. I can speak as a board member right now. I don't want to look down the line 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now and say, man, I really wish I would have done this. And that's why I think we're having this conversation now. Apart from that, this was actually what I was going to mention as far as my comments, because I know we had the work session 2 weeks ago, and then in the most recent board meeting, I did ask, so what's next? And I feel like that was thrown to Attorney Powers, thrown is a tough word, it was given to Attorney Powers to say, okay, we need to have another intergovernmental meeting. And personally, again, speaking from this board member, I don't think we're ready for that yet. I'm not certain that we as a board knows really what we would want to bring to an intergovernmental meeting to say what it is we would be asking for, because we would need to, rather than just having the conversation, those folks from the other elected bodies as well as the local community and developers were in that work session. They heard it in real time just like we did. And I'm not certain that we need to just get together to hash out what we all have already heard collectively. I think that it would be better for us to potentially now or in another work session in the very near future to talk more about what it is we actually would potentially want to be doing I know Ms. Thrower's been working hard on the interlocal agreement because that is a big step in the right direction. I know that statute drives how some of this happens. I know that proportionate share is a part of it. I know that impact fees and concurrency and all of those things we haven't talked about either in this community ever or in this community in a very long time are all a part of that. I know we haven't talked about if we want to build new schools or build new wings or when or where, or if we want to update what our downtown footprint looks like. I mean, I'm interested in this board having more conversation in a workshop where we're workshopping this conversation and say, what is it that we really want? What is it that we want to move forward with? I think we have been given a lot of information from our staff 2 weeks ago. And I think Ms. Dobbins also just sent us an email, very detailed email about leasing the downtown property and what that would look like. Personally, based on all of that, I can tell you right now that doesn't look like a pathway I would be interested in, but again, that's something we haven't been able to talk about together. So I welcome the opportunity, whether it's now or at a very soon work session, for us to start talking seriously about what do we want to do about downtown, what do we want to do about this property. If you say temporary, I'm not considering it temporary right now. Because I do think this is a viable option for us for district property and district offices, and why would you need to build an auditorium for board meetings when we have one? But that, again, those are just my thoughts that we haven't been able to have collectively, and I would like for the board, potentially, Chair, at your disposal, to actually have some of that dialogue ahead of planning another intergovernmental meeting with those bodies that I'm not certain we know what we're asking for yet. And that's all I had.
Thank you. And I agree. I think we do need to have a conversation about those. I hate to go to the table to ask for something or talk about an issue when we're going to the table and we're not on the same page at the same time.
Right.
Sorry, Ms. Thor.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, as part of the interlocal agreement committee, updating that agreement is a process, and when we feel like we've gotten the draft as ready as we can, it'll go to the attorneys for them. Thinking about a timeline for our next intergovernmental meeting, as a committee, we're looking at early next year, for that next intergovernmental meeting, so that it is productive. I would be interested in, it keeps getting presented to me that if we want to be looking at concurrency again, then we have to make that request to the county commission. And I know, Attorney Powers, you were going to do the background on that and see what steps we need to take. So I'll look forward to your input. I know the whole rest of the board will, when that is available. So it's definitely moving along. And it has been, at some levels, it's super educational for me. It's also been very painful because it's sort of illustrated that when everything just stopped in the economy, and also there were political forces involved where it was not a kumbaya time between the governmental entities, that we're now picking up those pieces. We're now reestablishing those relationships. There's new players at the table, and so far it's going really well. But it has been truly a process. So I'll have more information on that as far as the timeline. I don't want to punt and guess dates, but at our next work session or our next board meeting on Tuesday, I'll have some more hard dates for you of when we're meeting next and what that agenda is.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Thor. All right.
We're getting there. Slowly and painfully.
Thank you guys for all of your comments. To our presenters this morning, for what they have given us. We do have graduation, 3 more graduations.
Mm-hmm.
Vanguard, Bellevue, Lake Ware. 3 more graduations. So looking forward to the graduations. I think 2 are at the Livestock Pavilion and 1 is at Bellevue High School. So looking forward to that. I do want to say thank you to the presentations that were given this morning on disposition of tangible property and the insurance renewal. I think sometimes the public can be better informed by having those discussions and seeing the the work that goes into, the thought that goes into how we dispose of tangible property, because it pops up on our agenda every other week, and people are trying to figure out how it gets to that process, and we explained that entire process this morning, so I appreciate that. And then the renewals of the insurance, and we're in Florida, and everybody's know in Florida, insurance is real tricky, and we're talking about our own personal insurances on our home insurance with the roofs and everything like that. So I know that we're in a great place. I know that the team, risk management, does a tremendous job of putting us in the right place so that we have little, as minimal risk as we can have. And they've been doing a tremendous job with that. So I'm very appreciative of that. I also appreciate Board Member Browning's comments concerning this setup up here on the stage. He's made several comments about it, and I want to commend Mr. Christian and his team, because you've made some adjustments, and I don't think we can continue to make adjustments when you've gotten us to a better place. If there are little things that we need to modify, you've made those adjustments and modified it for us, and I appreciate that. So I'm not going to keep coming back every week critiquing or criticizing whether or not we're in a good place or not. I think from January to now, we've evolved this stage. This dais has evolved to where we are right now, and I'm not getting the complaints. I'm hearing people appreciating us for being here and having enough space, especially during this time. And so I want to commend you guys for the job that you do, and your tech team and everybody else, because when I look at it on YouTube and I go back and review it on YouTube, I listen for clarity. I listen for if there's issues, and I look for video issues, and I'm just seeing it getting to be a better and better product every time. So there is a safety component with it, with all of this, and I appreciate that. So I do hear your comments, Mr. Browning, and I appreciate your comments, and I think they have been heard overall by everyone. And I think that's because we've heard your comments. I think that's where we are, where we are today. You mentioned also about the summer conference. I think it was February, we all got emails from FADS concerning the summer conference, and then we should have gotten an email, all board members should have got an email, I guess it would be around March 31st, that went out to every board member here concerning their attendance to going to the summer conference. Those that responded to the email were given reservations and were able to put in their request to go to the summer conference. And then it was again on April 26th, you pulled the item about travel, out-of-county travel for board members, and you approved it. And there was no discussion, there was no issues about it. So if you did not meet that time frame, that's probably why you did not get a packet in regards to the conference, because that means that you did not register for the conference, or the district did not register you for the conference, as you probably did not advise them that you were going to attend. So that's probably why you didn't get the packet.
May I have the floor, sir?
You got. I was responding to. All right.
Thank you. Yes. Well, yeah. I never take mileage, ever.
It wasn't about mileage. It wasn't about mileage.
I realize. I never take mileage, and
me neither.
Nor do I.
Yeah. So I also have not heard. I didn't go into email because I don't think that's pertinent to the conversation. The question of I can be contacted on a regular basis if something's taking place very easily. My email, for example, I don't know how you guys, I see your systems tend to work. Mine does not work, and it's sitting in a bag. It does not function. I do receive email over my telephone, and that is a functional item. Now, this isn't for your approval. I'm making a statement, and the on my computer, the code was changed without my knowledge. And so I struggled with that for many months. So just to bring it up, I wasn't bringing that item up. And I would like to hear from the superintendent in reference to this upcoming conference. That simple. That simple. No explanation as to my failings of not being able to have achieved this information.
I'm not particularly understanding why the superintendent's going to say the same thing I just said.
Yes.
That we all got the email.
And that's the only way we were communicating.
That's the only way we were communicating.
So, and I also want to stress, I'm sorry that this has occurred. I was unaware that this was occurring. But the only way that any one of the board members was communicated with was electronically.
Right.
We all received the emails from the Florida School Board Association. We all received the email actually from our board support office to ask if we wanted to attend. I also have gone back in my emails, and every Wednesday, the Florida School Board Association sends a weekly resources email to us, and beginning on March 16th, they have annual summer conference, June 8th through the 10th. Registration opens on March 21st, and every single Wednesday since that time, the Florida School Board Association has had in their weekly email that you just said comes to your telephone. Perhaps that hasn't been a newsletter that you've been frequenting or reading, but that has been in every single one of these newsletters. So I knew when it was coming up. I knew when I wanted to register, because I pay attention to those emails on a weekly basis, but there's lots of good information in those emails, so it's not just that one thing that I see. And they also have listed, just for information's sake, November 29th through December 2nd is going to be the 77th Annual Joint Conference in Tampa, which will be the winter conference. So I put that out there publicly. The date will be November 29th through December 2nd for the joint conference in Tampa.
And again, in addition to that, the out-of-county travel for this conference was approved, and it was specific to where we were traveling to and who was traveling. That was on the April 26th, I think, board meeting, and you pulled that item.
Yes,
for discussion.
Thank you, Chair. My issue is not looking for approval or your understanding of how I function as a board member. My comment is that I would like to see information on this issue, not why I should have it or I shouldn't have it. I do not receive and have not received for months board services that all other board members on this board do receive. I have not received it. You may not be aware of that. So I am not bringing it up right now. I am stating that I would like the superintendent to be, if that upsets you, then that upsets you. I would like the superintendent to give me this information that I did not receive from board services. Now, if there's other ways to receive it, that's fine. I have not received it, and that's a simple question that it came to me just when board services was handing out packets. So it wasn't for your evaluation of my skills in terms of discerning these issues. I have not received that, and I would like the superintendent to give me that. Thank you, sir.
Let me address this. I will not evaluate your ability to read emails or get emails. I will ask the superintendent to please provide from the parties that sent the email showing that that everybody got the same email, the date that it was sent. Mr. Browning just stated that he does get his email and he's able to see it on his phone. So whether you're seeing it from the phone, iPad, computer, he had access. And if you do not have access, Mr. Browning, to email, please, I'm saying it publicly, if you do not have access to your emails via phone, via iPad, via the district provided computer, then that's something you need to let the superintendent's team know so that they could get that corrected. because you've been on the board almost a year, and we need to make sure that every board member has the same amount of access, but you just stated to us that you do get your email on your phone. To be honest with you, I meet most of my emails from the board.
Chair, if I may, this is growing very tiresome to me. You evaluating my ability.
I'm not evaluating you,
Sir.
I'm not evaluating you.
Sir.
I'm not evaluating you. I'm just telling you how we could correct this issue, because that's what you said, you wanted correction, correct?
Sir, I would like information from the superintendent, and I do not need evaluation of my comments.
I'm so sorry you feel you're being
by you,
evaluated for you not reading your email. Because
Sir,
that's what you're
I do
telling us.
not need to be chastised by you.
You're growing than me.
Sir.
Well, I would like to mention that it's a school board. It's from the School Board Association, and the school board, it is not the superintendent's duty to check up on the school board members to make sure that they have read their emails or that they are going to a conference. She has 43,000 students, 7,000 employees. The last thing our superintendent needs to be focused on and trying to make sure that he's reading all his emails, I don't think that's fair to our superintendent. She has a much bigger job to do.
Chair, if I may, to confirm and clarify, the Florida School Board Association sends information directly to school board members. I do not. Members of my team do, and I'm just confirming, Nicole, the only information that came from board services is anything, once the board member indicated they wanted to go, that they would make the arrangements. But information to Florida School Board Association events are held and directed by the School Board Association directly to school board members, not through me or my team. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And the only other thing that I would express, because it was something that Mr. Browning did bring up, is this board member doesn't utilize board services. So I know that a comment was made about not receiving board services. The only communication frequently, and Ms. Prestopino could say this, I might pick up the phone and talk for 1 minute, maybe once every 3 weeks, maybe, if even that. This board member does not utilize board services at all. They have booked this travel for me because an email went to them to request them to do that. But that was back in March or April. And I honestly have very, very little communication with the board services team. I appreciate all that they do to ensure that we are in order with our agendas and our minutes and all of that. But just to publicly state that, because I know that you have also expressed that you're not receiving board services. I just wanted to state I don't utilize them. That's not something that I have a need for, frankly. I appreciate all that they do for us as a board, again, collectively, but that's just where I am on it. So thank you,
You have any
Nicole.
more comments, Mr. Browning?
Elena.
Well, yes, I do. Previously, I was rather pleased to see the smoothness of the discussion around going to the Hyatt in Tampa and with the Florida School Board Association conference. It was elaborate and very useful services. I believe it was in November. Very elaborate, and there was a pretty, you can go back and you can look at it, but pretty elaborate instruction, information as to what was taking place through the district board services. I know I received significant information at the time, and it was helpful, quite frankly. And today, I just saw, and it was the only reason I brought it up, was today I just saw packets being sent out, and whether or not other people have the information, I specifically was not in the loop, and so I'm asking for that information. If it's not forthcoming, then it is not forthcoming. But I would, I like that information, And there is an issue associated with timing. I know that. And there's an issue associated with the length of the conference. So if there's, if you know, this is a simple thing. It is not an evaluation of my ability to pull something off an iPhone. It's a question of, we've got a conference coming up, and this board member would like to know more about it. And so if you've got information on it, let me know, and I'll make some decisions on it. It's that simple. Thank you.
Ms. Presbitino, can you advise of this concerning this conference, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Browning, the packets that were handed out were not actually packets. It was the room reservations and the agenda for the conference that the board members confirmed that they were attending.
No, I realize that. And that was hence my question, that I would like to be informed as to the timing, the extent of the and the cost to the district of that particular participation.
All that information was included in the board packet when it was voted on.
April?
In April.
April 26th. All of that was in our board. That's what I'm saying. I'm not chastising you, Mr. Browning. I'm just stating we've already, this is down the road. It was pulled, and we discussed all of this back in April. You pulled it.
Chair, the information on something that's upcoming, we have, and I understand your surprise, I guess. If an upcoming situation, I know we have upcoming things that we address on a regular basis. An upcoming thing is simply that. I just would like to have the information, sir. That's that simple. Not what I should do and what I shouldn't do. I'd just like to have the information, and if I attend, I will attend. If I don't attend, I won't attend. But thank you very much. I appreciate your concern. It's that simple. I would like the information. Thank you very much, sir.
From my understanding, registration is closed, correct?
Online registration closed on Friday. It does say on-site registration is available for a $30 late fee. The FSBA FADS Annual Summer Conference will be held June 8th through the 10th. It says, online, on their online registration, FSBA FADS Annual Summer Conference provides an opportunity for school board members, superintendents, district staff, and others to network, gain needed insight into the issues and events impacting education, and access valuable professional development opportunities. More information is available closer to the event. There is a tentative agenda link as well here. The rate to attend, the member rate, which you are a member of FSBA, as we all are, is $275. At this point, there additionally would be a $30 late fee because the registration would have to be on site. My question would be, if Mr. Browning did want to, there also is a daily rate if you just want to drive down on one of the days and to attend. The daily rate is $205 with a $30 late fee. My question is, because we had to have this approved in advance, because if there is a hotel reservation included, it does exceed the $500 limit, then we as a board have to approve that in a board meeting, which is why we approved it in April, April, to get this to happen. So I'm not sure where we go from here. This is the information, obviously, you'll need to critique and analyze if it will work in your schedule. But if we were to have a reservation, including a hotel reservation, I think that exceeds the $500 limit. But again, you certainly would have the ability to drive down.
I'm just looking for the information.
Sure, and it's all available right here on their website.
I'm looking for the information, but perhaps a link would suffice.
I can email it to you right now.
No,
I'll email it to Attorney Powers.
You can email it.
I'll email it to Attorney Powers, and he can send it out to everyone, even though
I think
we all have
that
it.
would be prudent. Thank you.
Attorney Powers, can your office make sure you redistribute this information that Ms. Campbell is sending to you? And just put it to all of us.
Yes, I will. And I'm trying to confirm right now. I believe this information's still there on Board Doc for the items.
It is. It's
on
all
Board
available
Docs.
online.
And I'm looking at right now on board docs for the April 26th school board meeting that all of us have access to. All of the information we're talking about is right there. This is the item that was pulled for discussion by Mr. Browning, but it's right there.
Now, I have a bigger concern.
Board docs.
I have a
For that date, April 26th.
I have a big concern because according to Board Member Browning, he's stating that he's not getting his emails based on some technical issue. That issue needs to be resolved through.
I understand. Now, I will tell you that regardless of any issue, whether it exists or doesn't exist with email, board docs right now, with any device, I can log on and get this information right now. It doesn't require anything particular to do that. However, I know this is the first I've heard about there not being a ability for a board member to receive the email. It was just that it was not received in formats sometimes that were requested or desired. So that's a separate issue. I'm not going to get into trying to fix that because that's beyond my purview. What I can do is indicate to Board Member Browning that, and to all board members, that if you go to board docs, which I believe every one of us knows how to do, that information's right there.
Right.
So that's where it is. That's where it lives, that's where it's housed, that's where the public can see it, that's where board members can see it. That's where, when you pull an item, you can access it, and it's, if anything further is required of me, please let me know now so that I can make sure that I get it done.
That's why I'm seeming so surprised, Mr. Browning, not to chastise you or anything, but we've been through this.
Yes, sir, I'm looking for the information. It's that
information
simple.
lives at
Sir,
boarddocs.com.
One moment, please. I think the reason you were called in to the discussion was so that it would fit within Sunshine Law. I can get to the information. I think I've heard it now several times. My question was for that information to come. It's a rather elaborate discussion and multiple phone calls and multiple involvements. If you would like to educate yourself on just how involved it was, you could look at some earlier board meetings and workshops when we discussed this at length. And the idea of the timing and how soon it comes and what have you, you have a thing called board services. And that board services is a clerical support for board members. I was surprised when those were handed out today, and I'm asking for information, not where it is and what I should be finding or what I could be finding. If I knew it was there, I would look for it. But I do know where it is now, and perhaps the deadlines that I was informed of prior to that November situation. I was informed on a regular basis by board services. This is the first I've seen, and there are other things in our lives. I don't know why we're going into such detail. I am looking for information, and maybe there is an implication that I haven't had board services for some time, and you know, that is germane, and it'd be another topic that we could talk about. However, in this case, these deadlines take place, and typically, if you have a clerical staff, the clerical staff lets you know that this is coming up and that a deadline is arriving.
Okay,
so that's my
We're going to stop that right there because this was not a clerical staff issue. This came from the Florida School Boards Association, and it came from FADS. So we're not going to muddy up our clerical services because that's not the issue. So anyway, I was concluding with my comments. I've addressed all those things, and there are no further comments. I do look forward to us going to the summer conference next week. However, prior to that, we have a board meeting on next Tuesday night. So with that being said, no further comments. Meeting is adjourned at 11:15 a.m.